In the heart of Africa, there lived a queen who defied all expectations. She was a force to be reckoned with, a tireless champion of African independence who stood up to Portuguese colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade. She was raised by a diplomat and a strategist and had ambitions that went far beyond the traditional role for women in her society. Her name was Nzinga, also known as Nzinga Mbande. Born in the year 1583 to Ngola Kilombo Kia Kesanda of Ndogo Kingdom. It was said that Nzinga was born with her umbilical cord twisted around her neck, and a wise woman present at her birth predicted she was destined to be a queen, which was strange since the king already had an heir, Prince Mbandi, her elder brother. Nzinga was a trained warrior, cunningly smart, and was trained to read and write by Portugal missionaries. She was also her father's favorite and was always by his side, which gave her the access to witness council meetings, including legal councils, war councils, and important rituals on the affairs of the state. The lessons she learned will in turn serve he well. Nzinga's father was murdered in 1617. She was 34 years old at that time. Her brother, Prince Mbandi, took over the throne. Mbande had always been jealous of Nzinga so much so he saw his nephew, Nzinga's son, as a threat, and ordered his murder for the fear of being challenged by him in the future. He also ordered his sister's womb be removed to avoid future mistakes. Nzinga and her husband fled in fear for their lives to Matamba, their neighboring village. They watched from afar Ndogo crumble in the weak hands of her brother, King Mbandi. Mbandi was driven from his court by the colonial rule and sought for his sister's help as his ambassador, since she was fluent in Portuguese. She agreed on conditions that she'll be given a royal title and an entourage. Mbandi obliged. This was a very big opportunity for Nzinga to prove herself. In 1622, Nzinga traveled to Luanda with her entourage based on the agreement with her brother to be his ambassador to the Portuguese. On arriving there for the negotiations, Nzinga noticed there was no sit in the court for her, only a mat, which signified the superiority of the colonial rulers over the African rulers. She refused to sit or kneel before them instead. One of her servants made herself a stool for her on her order. It wasn't a surprise that the negotiations was successful, considering how smart Nzinga was. She demanded a few things. For the Portuguese to see her kingdom as an independent kingdom, the withdrawal of colonial soldiers from her kingdom, and to cease demanding tribute. In return, she'll become a Christian and get baptized, and Ndogo will trade with them. She remained in Luanda for 6 months to learn the ways of the Portuguese, converted into Christianity, baptized and given a Christian name, Ana de Souza. She was also close to the governor's wife. Nzinga returned home a success to the shame and disgrace of her brother, the then king of Ndonga. She gained the trust of her people and was seen more competent than her brother. This drove her brother into depression and caused him to take his own life. It was finally her time, but there was a little problem. Her nephew, the late king's successor, was still alive and was hiding amongst the Mbangalas. The Mbangala people are ruthless warriors and are rumored to be cannibals. Because of how good of warriors they are often sought after by both the colonial powers and other African kingdoms to be allies in war. Nzinga, desperate to avenge her son, found a way to get a hold of her brother's son. She had a plan. She started moving towards the chief of Mbangala and seduced him. He fell and asked for her hand in marriage, and she agreed. Before the ceremony, she got a hold of her nephew, stabbed and threw him into the river. She made it known that she had avenged her son. Queen Nzinga ascended the throne of Ndongo in 1924. She ruled her people well but had enemies, but from within her court to the neighboring kingdoms questioning her rulings because of her gender. She didn't let that faze her. She had so many male concubines. One of Nzinga's most important efforts to resist the slave trade was her policy of granting asylum to escaped slaves from Portuguese colonies. She provided these slaves with protection and support and welcomed them into her kingdom as free people. This policy of asylum made Ndongo and Matamba a refuge for many slaves seeking to escape the brutality of the Portuguese slave trade. The Portuguese heard about this and asked Nzinga to return the slaves, and she denied having slaves in her kingdom. Nzinga also used her diplomatic skills to try to persuade other African leaders to resist the slave trade. She traveled to neighboring kingdoms to form alliances and share information about Portuguese tactics and strategies. Nzinga had a strategic alliance with the Kingdom of Congo, which was one of the largest and most powerful kingdoms in Central Africa at the time. The two kingdoms had a shared interest in resisting Portuguese aggression and maintaining their independence. In the early 1630s, Nzinga's brother had sought refuge in Congo after the Portuguese invaded Ndogo, and Nzinga maintained close ties with the Congo rulers throughout her reign. She supported Congo in its own conflicts with the Portuguese, and Congo provided her with military support and refuge when she needed it. The Portuguese, however, started getting suspicious of Nzinga and no longer wanted to hold their own end of the bargain. They changed their minds and wanted tributes from her, both monetary and human slaves. Back in Luanda, her servant spies serving as slaves got intel of the government trying to kill her. She was informed and ran away to Matambo with her people. Back in Ndogo, a new puppet king was reinstated to do the biddings of the Portuguese. In the early 1640s, a new colonial rule was seeking settlement, and Nzinga saw this as an opportunity. Nzinga formed a close alliance with the Dutch, who were also competing with the Portuguese for control of the region. The Dutch provided Nzinga with military and financial support, including firearms and gunpowder, which helped her to strengthen her army and hold off Portuguese attacks. In return, Nzinga gave the Dutch trading rights and access to Ndongo's resources, including slaves and ivory. Nzinga personally led her army to victory, as she was a skilled warrior. African kings, including the Portuguese's Ndongo puppet king, submitted to her rule. The Portuguese, on the other hand, reinforced more men from Brazil and defeated Nzinga's army, taking her sister hostage. She retreated again. She fought the Portuguese for a while and realized the battle was beyond using military tactics. She turned to her cunning ways, using a political and an economical strategy to make her joint kingdom so strong that it will be a force to reckon with. She reached out to Catholic missionaries, telling them her intentions of converting her kingdom to Christianity. The missionaries were happy and offered to serve as emissaries between her and the big church. With the Catholic Church by her side, the Portuguese had no option but to offer a peaceful treaty. He also released her sister and recognized her as an independent queen. She, however, had one threat, the Mbangala. She led her people to one last war at old age and killed the chief, presenting his head to the Portuguese governor. She built churches, converted her people to Christianity, and organized baptism. She also got married in church to a very young man. Queen Nzinga died in her sleep at the age of 80 in 1663. She has a statue in Angola, celebrating her as the mother of Angola. Shout out to at History Tea Time with Lindsay Holiday for providing us with material. You should check out her channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you should consider subscribing. See you on the next one.